Welcome to the Lady Belin Show, where faith meets everyday life. This is the space where biblical truth becomes personal and real stories lies the path to transformation. Through heartfelt conversations, powerful testimonies, and spirit-led insights, we journey together, growing stronger, wiser, and bolder in purpose. Because here, we believe every story matters, and you can always find strength in yours. This is the Lady Belin Show.
We would always have technical difficulties, but hopefully we'll get through. A great evening to each and every single one of you. Welcome to the Lady Belin Show with myself and my co-host, Albert. We're here again to just bless us, to serve us, and to speak on a subject that we believe is extremely important for us to talk about. It's a problem in our society, in our community, and we are hoping, we're not only wanting to add our voice, but we want to see real change. And I believe that we all have a responsibility to make that change in order for us to see different outcome. Last week we were here, we were talking about the rod, when the rod wounds, the aftermath, how the trauma, how the abuse affects the child. And this evening we are back again because we felt the conversation wasn't finished last week when we ended it, and we wanted to come back, go deeper, be able to provide solution. We've talked about the problem, the issue. Now we want to know, what can we do to do things better? What can we do to make that that positive change? And so again, this week we are privileged to have our guests rejoin us, Jesse and Abena May, to rejoin us for us to have that conversation, and hopefully that they'll be able to provide us with the tools that we can use as parents, as adults in society, that are surrounded by children. It's our duty to nurture these children in a safe space and environment. So we are back with them this week to help provide us with some tools that we can use to make things better and life better for these children. And my guest, my co-host Albert, I'm sure you want to say hello to the viewers, right?
Hey, how's it going? Thank you very, very much for having me once again, Lady Belin. And I'm actually very, very humbled and really can't wait to get this ball rolling. Ladies and gentlemen, listen, I can't wait myself, and I know you also cannot wait. So, without any further ado, without just wasting any more time, let us bring into in JC, our guest, our beautiful guest, JC and Abena May into
And you
the.
know what? Not to cut you, but before we do that, I want us to play a video and I want us to listen. I want us to watch. But most importantly, I want us to listen. I want us to see how this conversation that we are having is necessary for us to have it.
Let's do
And
it.
why? Because of the long-term effect of these actions on children. Watch this video, and then when you finish, we'll come with our guests to start the conversation.
Did your mother like you?
No, I don't think so. No.
How do you know that?
I wasn't a bad, coming up in bad as a child or teenager, because I was afraid of my mom.
Why?
Because my dad, my real dad, this was the man that she fell in love with, you could say, and wanted him, but he didn't want her to marry.
Oh, okay.
And I look like his twin.
So how did she treat you as a result?
Bad.
What does that mean?
Get the, oh, I love you.
Take your time.
She would tie me to the chairs. Yes, with the stocking caps. So begging. She whip me with the extension cord.
Whip you with an extension cord.
Yes.
Tie you to a chair with
Yes,
stockings.
yes.
Miss LaRonda, just let your heart break for that. It's okay. Your mother was afraid of you because of your inappropriate behavior.
I learned the behavior from her and my dad. I saw you do it to Dad. And I remember one time you threw a knife at him. And it went past my face and went in the door.
And that was 20 years ago.
And he was a child, and he learned violence and inappropriate behavior from you and his father.
I learned what triggers my anger, and I learned coping skills to help me to diffuse. So I don't go off like that. I've grown, but I do regret that you saw that.
Please forgive me
Please forgive me
for the behavior I demonstrated
for the behavior I demonstrated
that taught you
that taught you
it was okay
it was okay
to express anger
to express anger
inappropriately.
inappropriately.
That's how you acknowledge.
But I really was just hurt, man. Incredibly hurt, and I felt alone.
Why are you so hard on yourself?
I kind of like made my own decision when I was younger. Put me in a position where I really couldn't my baby mother didn't really want me to be every day in their life type thing. It's bad stuff to the children, let's put it like that. Abuse.
Abuse.
And I just don't want to put, exactly.
Physical abuse.
We're gonna go with abuse though.
And that's what sent you to end it all. You felt guilty.
I've carried that guilt already. Like seeing the way my son is now.
How is he?
Violent.
You mean like you were this morning? Afraid that your sons are what?
He just like me.
Say it again.
He just like me.
Knew I wasn't happy inside, but I always played it off. I put a smile on my face when I knew I was hurting or sad inside. Even with relationships that I had with women, I really didn't know how to have a relationship with them. Know that you were my dad, and know that on that side of the street, you had kids, you had a wife. To me, that was a family, and I wasn't a part of that. I'm staying with my grandmother, and I didn't have a dad. And it's hurt.
Let him know he broke your heart. I want you to understand this from the mind of an 11-year-old. Because right now, he's not 39. These are the tears he didn't cry when you found the right time to tell him.
I hope you can forgive. I want you to know I love you. I love you. I know. I forgive you.
Yes.
Wow.
Forgiving you. This is the last part of that. That is a 39-year-old man. That's an NFL player. He earns millions of dollars, broken and crushed like that. Why? Because his childhood was traumatized. And to think that man is sitting there live on camera, crying like a baby. Why? Because his young self is still yearning for that love. Sometimes all the child needs is to hear, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I love you. Then the healing, the reconciliation has begun. The healing process has begun. And I don't want Albert and I to be the only people having this conversation. So we're bringing our guest on, and I want us all to have that dialogue. So, welcome again. Jesse and Abena May. We are grateful for choosing to share the platform with us. Last week, you blessed us so much. As I was saying behind the camera, that my takeaway was on attuned parenting. I had never heard that. And the more I looked into it, it re emphasized something that Jesse had said. And it really, we're not here saying that parents should not discipline their children. What we are saying that is that the discipline must be applied or must be done through love. And that is what attuned parenting is. Tonight or this evening, we are starting with Abner. And Abner, from your line of work, we want to focus on aftercare for the wounded child. So now the child has been, traumatized. The child has been abused. The child is living in that fear. The child is living in that survival that last week you shared with us, where they make references, any kind of sound they're hearing, they're making references to that place, that trauma. And then, it kind of, they're always on that edge. So, what can we do to help these children that have been wounded, that their childhood has been wounded? So, what are some of the signs that you can tell us to pick up as adults around these children that shows that the child has emotionally or psychologically been wounded? Sorry, your sound wasn't coming. I hope we can now hear. I'm sorry
Hello.
about that.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, we can.
Yes,
Thank
amazing.
you. So, good evening to everyone watching us. We are really privileged to be used as a vessel to be a blessing unto many. Thank you for this opportunity. I do not take it for granted at all. I'll start off with thank you for the question again. With the signs that indicates that these children or these individuals have experienced traumatic events. So it stems, like I said to you, about the impact that it has, that it originally stemmed from an impact on their brain, and which influences their response. So some of the signs that you could look out for is, for example, a child being withdrawn,
Mm,
um, a child that is struggling to, concentrate, a child that has, very low self-esteem,
yeah.
lost appetite, so many odd presentation from these children sometimes can give you the indication that they have experienced some kind of significant traumas, and perhaps, a way of you picking up on those. That is those people that have not really lived in the environment. For the parents who have caused this pain to these children, um, you can also pick up on these things as well. But again, it's about acknowledging that, my actions have affected my child, and perhaps this is why I'm seeing the signs that I'm seeing, because it comes from a place of you being able to be in a better place for you to be able to identify. So when I'm talking about somebody picking up on the signs of a child, with lost appetites, child feeling very low self-esteem, feeling very withdrawn, it's about those that haven't lived in the same environment with the child. So when you begin to see some signs on the child telling you that something has happened. And the most painful thing about what we are talking about here is that it's not a cat, that brings her blood, but yet it's the deepest and the most hurtful cat that anybody, or hurtful pain that anybody could experience. And what makes it sad is that because it's in a place of internal, it's something that you have experienced, it's something that you're dealing with. Most of the time, people cannot easily see what you're feeling or how you feel about the situation until you talk about it. So it's something you're dealing with on the inside by yourself. And that's what makes it painful, because
Mm,
you're living it every day of your life.
mm.
So
So,
cognitively,
mhm. Sorry, go
so
on.
so psychologically, you would
Mhm.
see that the person um will be struggling to kind of concentrate. The person will be depicting um hyperactivity sort of.
Right.
And I know that neurologically, some children come with those kind of defects, whereby not by the experiences of these traumatic events that they become hyperactive. They are born with it. It come with that as well. But this is different. So when a child has lived in an attuned parenting environment and they are depicting these things, then you can easily take them for an assessment of whether they could have an ADHD or any extra, needs. But whilst the child have lived in an environment, where they've experienced a significant traumas as a way as part of the way that they were being parented, then picking up on these things also help you to identify how you can support the child as well. I don't know if I'm making any sense at all.
Jesse, your line of experience, I'm sure, some of these signs that Abena May is talking about, is it something as a teacher you're able to pick up or
Yes.
see through the child's behavior or anything like that?
Yes, first of all, thank you and good evening to everybody. Thanks once again for the opportunity. I'm really grateful to be here again. Yes, so following on what Abena said, you do see these things very clearly, especially she mentioned HD, attention deficit disorder. This really is one of the challenging things that we currently face with students who constantly can't concentrate. Every opportunity that they get, they have to go off task. So some will even walk around the classroom. The behavior makes it very difficult for you to teach them, and it becomes a big barrier to their learning. So whatever Abena has spoken about, you do see those signs very clearly with kids like that within the classroom most of the time. Yeah. So I do. Yeah, I've seen most of it in class.
Okay. What would you say in terms of aftercare? What would you say it looks like post abuse or harsh discipline? What does real aftercare looks like post abuse or harsh discipline? And that's Abner.
Is that
Yes.
to me?
Yeah.
Not to me. Oh, thank you. So, post abuse or post the trauma that the child has experienced, um, so in terms of the parent, so it depends where the child will be. So if the child is with the same parent or is with a different parent, then the expectation will be different. Because it will be different from that of the one that perpetrated, and it's sometimes more impactful when it's coming from the perpetrator. What sometimes the healing is really impactful when it's coming from the person who has caused it and now realize that I think I've crossed the line. I think I have done things that I thought will be the right, but now I feel I've caused the damage, and and it's never too late, and I can do things to try and reverse those things, as opposed to somebody that hasn't lived in the same environment with the child, and we assume that this parent will be in a better place to be able to provide, some reparative work or some work with the child to kind of restore them back. So in respect to where the child is living with the person who has caused them that, damage, our advice is that first of all, you need to look after yourself. You need to be in a better place. You need to be able to assess support, to know the difference, in terms of what to do to support this child. But actually, what speaks the most and the loudest is when a parent, that I've used this style of parenting. I have been used to a partner that comes to abuse me in front of my child and all of that, and the screaming and the way that we approach our children that has caused them trauma. When you realize that, you begin to seek help to be in a better place, and after that, you take those things out of the
Right.
environment. Okay. So for example, the perpetrator of that abuse no longer in the picture. If it's parenting that is a way of you rebuking and chastising and all of those things, it's undoing those things. So whilst you used to shout and approach the child with physical chastisement, now you're learning it's not the right
Right.
way. So the child does something and then you do it differently. So it does something, oh, this is not how it's meant to be done. This is how it's meant to be done. I think the child will even be shocked to think, I was expecting you to hit me, but you're not actually hitting me. What changed? So you're doing this, gradually as you're doing it, you're reversing those things. And then as a parent as well, it's also important, that you validate these children's feeling. When you're having a chat with them, you don't go on, oh, that you're making too much a big deal about it. That's nothing. Why did you not do this? Why did you not do that? You're making this child or this person feel like I have to be blamed for the abuse that I went through or the traumas that I suffered. um you know you're making them feel unheard,
Right.
and that is what they grow up with because they are keeping it inside. They don't ever believe were not able to share, of whatever the reasons, their feelings or what they went through was not validated, they live with it. It never goes anywhere. It stays
Right.
with them. And that's how come we can live with them till their adulthood, because it's unprocessed, it's untouched, and it remains where it is. So you begin to, do that work with them in terms of in their own pace. Do they want to talk about it? You also be mindful of the things, the conversations you have around them. You'll be mindful around, exposing them to the things that have caused them trauma. So now taking the environment away, taking the unsafe environment away from them, or taking them out of the unsafe environment to a safer environment. I think it's a place where you have to emotionally intelligent and attune to making that change for your child, and it comes. Yeah.
All right.
Go on.
Thank you so much. Were you about to speak, Jesse? Oh, thank you so much, Jesse and Abena May, once again for having you guys here. I just couldn't wait to have you guys here once again. Seriously. My question is this too. I mean, any of you will answer this for me. How do you deal with the school of hard knock, the Humpty Dumptys, the tough ones, those ones like myself that without the cane, there's no way you could handle us in this modern era, because right now, canes are not even used in schools anymore. Parents, especially in the West here, you know, kind of have lost a bit of grips when it comes to controlling their children. I'm not sure if you know. So how do you deal with the stubborn ones? The ones that you say sit here, they say no. You say stand here, they say no, I'll sit. How do you deal with those ones?
Okay. Yeah, go on up now.
Okay. I can throw something in there in respect to that. So, like we're talking about the attuned parenting, okay? When something is stemming from love, okay, it breaks the heart, it melts the heart, okay. It can cause a lot of change. It creates a very positive environment. So where there is a tense environment, mind you, the children are feeding on to what the environment is projecting.
Right.
What you're projecting is what the child is feeding on. So the child will pick up on the energy that you, the parent, you're bringing in the picture. So if they said a soft voice or something, I've forgotten that Bible verse, but it melts the
Yes.
Yeah.
heart. Okay. So it's about strategies in how you're able to support this child. If for example you're thrown in an environment where you know nothing, you begin to find a way of survival. So where there is no structure, where there is no routine, where there is no clear guidance and boundaries, the child is meant to survive, because that's what you would do, because you're trying to navigate and find your
Right.
way. So whilst I'm trying to navigate and find my way, you come in the picture and tell me, no, you mustn't do that, you mustn't, but you haven't taught me what I can and cannot
Right.
do. So then it becomes a tension, because I'm struggling with what my brain has learned to survive on my own.
Right.
So my survival does not make sense to you. So you want to impose yours. So
Wow.
it turns into some kind of a battle between yourself and the child. But you can restore by creating that clear routine and boundaries and clear lines of structure for this child. Okay. And you have to stem from the love in trying to, read the message that their emotions and whatever they are, you think that's wayward behavior. What is it telling you? What's the message behind that? Is it a message of I'm confused, I don't know what to do, I'm struggling, my emotions, I cannot control it, I need somebody? So what they are projecting is something inward and it's telling you a message. But you have to be in a place where you're emotionally intelligent to read on those, be able to support the child. So if you're supporting the child, for example, I don't know if I'm speaking too fast, but I know I'm mindful of the time we have as well. When you're supporting a child in terms of ensuring boundaries and ensuring that the child understands what you're referring to as the discipline is, for example, I have maybe a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old or a 7-year-old, and I'm saying to the child, okay, when you spill this drink, okay, you're not going to get any more
Right.
drink. Why? Because you're only allowed a cup of drink for this time
Yeah.
or this particular
Okay.
time, and then the remaining is what is meant to be used another time.
Right.
Or you don't waste this because it's meant for you to consume. So if you throw it, that means you've wasted, and it means that you're not going to get another,
Right.
cup. So you've told the child the consequences if they throw it. You've explained to the child why they shouldn't do that
Actions, your
and the
actions
reasons.
and the repercussion, or your
Makes a lot
actions
of
and the
sense.
yeah.
Exactly. So you would have to also get the child to repeat what you have said to some extent to you. So you need to be very consistent. You don't do one and go and do B because you confuse their brain. Okay. So you tell them that you help them, okay, to be able to communicate that they've understood the instructions that you've given or the message that you've given. And if by any chance, okay, if they deliberately spill it or they spill it as against your instructions or your guidance, then what you're going to do is you're going to stick to what you have said. You're not going to get another thing. You get another thing tomorrow. It could be a pencil, it could be a bookcase, whatever. You get it on the next time. You make sure you adhere to that. You do not say you won't get. Actually, let me give you. They do not understand, so it becomes a battle up and down. I don't know if that
Yeah.
answered
Uh,
your
Jesse,
questions a
please, do
bit.
you have anything to add to this?
Yes, from stemming from what Abena is saying, I think one of the things we need to understand is discipline is not about control.
Mm, okay.
It's
I
routine
like
discipline. Yeah, so it's not about control necessarily. It's routine discipline in love. What we mean by routine discipline in love is setting boundaries very clearly, like Abna says, setting boundaries very clearly and calmly. It's not from a place of anger. You're setting the boundaries, but very calmly and not from a place of anger. And also, it's really important we consider using natural consequences instead of punishments, for instance. So, for example, like Abna gave an example of the cup. I would say that if a child, let's say, breaks a toy out of frustration, the consequences, you lose the toy.
Right.
Yeah, so you lose the toy. So you're the consequences, it's a natural one. It's not coming from, necessarily punishments. That they can see, okay, out of frustration, you've broken the toy, then the consequences, you're losing the toy, not TV time. You're not having any TV time. What did the child do? The child broke the toy out of frustration. So rather than saying that you're not having the toy, instead of saying you're not having the toy, don't use like, okay, no TV time for the next 20 minutes or 30 minutes, because you're not addressing the issue. And also, she mentioned consistency. Consistency and emotional safety is very, very important. Because if children thrive where they know, when to expect and feel secure, even if, they're corrected, if that consistency is there, they know that, okay, I'm just reflecting on my parenting now. My kids sometimes can get away with saying things to me, and my husband always tells me, because they know that dad is very consistent. Sometimes I can go in this
Constantly
direction,
changing your mind.
yeah,
Yeah.
go in that direction. So but when dad says, hey, you sit down, they know straight away that dad's approach is very consistent. So
Right.
I think when it comes to consistency and emotional safety, we really have to consider that. And one of the key things, as Abna was talking, I also was reflecting on, is using I statements instead of blaming. So it's something very difficult, especially from the African background. We're not really trained to use such language. So rather than saying you're always rude, you could say, I feel concerned, with the way you speak like that. I feel concerned. So rather than attacking the child with negative, behavior, negative emotion, why are you so rude? Why are you disrespectful? Um, Maybe just still, I feel really concerned with the way you presented this. Next time, the right things to say, oh, please, mommy, or, please, dad. So it's really important that we understand that discipline in general is not about control, but it should be, rooted in love. And these are some of the things that I've picked up from what Abena.
Thank you so much for sharing. That is just amazing. I have to write this, somewhere. Discipline is not about control. I mean, when you spoke about that, it brings me way back again to, I mean, back home during school times when our teachers used to come to inspect how neat we are, and the mental in the morning, and the way they were disciplining us. Sometimes it was you could tell well, looking back now, I could see how frustrated they must have been to pour all those, frustrations and angers on us. And um, is there any tools for effective discipline? I mean, that parents, I mean, not just parents, because I mean, if you look at society in general, it's like right now we are very individualistic in such a way that once we see somebody else, child, or somewhere in the community doing something which is not good, it's like everyone is minding their business. Do you think that could also be a factor why sometimes, kids are not getting that discipline? Is it because is discipline something that has to do with the parenting, or has to do with the community, getting involved? I'm not sure if my question is a bit.
Um, Should I step
Yeah,
in?
go ahead,
Please.
Sophie.
Sorry. So in terms of practical tools, first of all, parents, are the number one. I'll say the sole people that need to be responsible for the discipline of their children. And one thing, personally, I've realized in education, it feels like these days parents are leaving a lot of responsibilities on teachers to fix, their children rather than taking that full ownership. So I'm just going to talk about a bit of practical tools that we parents, we can use in general, because I think we are the first line of call that kids can come straight to us. So things like time ins instead of time out is really important. It's very important to stay with the child to help them regulate their emotions. I can,
Sorry, I need to interrupt there
sorry,
because I think what you just said,
yeah,
I don't even know what time in, time out is. And
okay.
we kind of almost like brushed through and went to the next. So for another person like me who doesn't know what time in, time out is, can you share what that is?
Okay. So for instance, your child is, gotten things wrong, they're all over the place, and then you just give the clear instructions, go to your room or stay there. And then you can see the child is frustrated, especially with very little children. You can tell the child is really frustrated. They're crying, they're screaming. You think neglecting them is probably, a way to show them you discipline them. So I'll say the timeout, you're leaving them. You're literally abandoning that emotions that they're facing. But time in means you're staying in with them. You're helping them through that process. You're helping them to regulate their emotions. I quite remember at the beginning, I thought, if my child is misbehaving and I tell them off, leaving them to cry for a very long period of time, was the way forward. But I realized as time went on, they felt more closer to their dad more than me, because dad will stay with them, help them regulate through their emotions. And then when I changed my approach, they will cry for some time, but I stay with them, I hug them. I'm like, I understand what you're going through, but this and this and this is what you did. That is the reason why mommy told you off. That is the reason why. So I had to explain. So even though they've done something wrong, I stayed in with them to help them regulate those emotions. It's really, really important. And one of the practical tools that I've picked up personally as a parent is offering choices as well. So sometimes when we want kids to do something, we don't give them some. Yeah, offering choice will depend, but it's really important to prepare their mind. So let's say you want your child to do something. Oh, David, in 5 minutes time, can clean up this place for me, or maybe in 10 minutes time. So you're preparing their mind to do what you want them to do,
Right.
rather than coming in very strongly. Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? Why didn't you do that? So I realized, because I used to do that. I will always just give instructions straight away and expect it needs to be done straight away. And I realized for my partner, he would say, okay, 10 minutes TV time, 5 minutes this, 10 minutes time. So offering them choices is either you do this or you go to your cot. It's either you do that or you go. So offering those choices helps them to also think about whatever choice they want to make. And I believe it's something that, a skill that we even stay with them all the way through to adulthood, making choices for themselves. And also labeling emotions, I think, is really important. So you can probably say that I see you're frustrated. Do you want help with that? Like, what do you need from me? Oh, I see you're very sad. I see you're angry. I see, it's labeling the emotions makes them understand that you understand what it is that they're going through. And by labeling those emotions, you're able to tackle the exact emotion that the child is feeling, rather than attacking them from all different angles that they themselves can't even process those emotions. So these are some of the practical tools that I'm sharing: time ins, time instead of time outs, and offering choices and labeling the emotions. These are some of the things that I think that we need to consider as parents. And from my personal experience, I wasn't doing that, but now that I'm doing that, I can see the impact that is happening. Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, listening to those tools, fantastic. Abena, let me come to you because I'm thinking, okay, I guess whilst you're saying that, Jesse, I'm thinking in my mind, so what age gap, what age group are we looking at? Because if you're looking at someone, a toddler and below, maybe 5 and under, a little older, or maybe from 5 upwards, you can have that dialogue with them. They can almost understand certain things. But when you're dealing with, let's say, a 2-year-old, a 1-year-old, they probably don't understand some of these things that you're talking. Let me help you understand your emotions. Let me sit with you in that. A 1-year-old doesn't understand that. Abna, how would that kind of approach, how would it work with a toddler, someone maybe let's say 3 and under or 2 and under? If that approach doesn't work, what kind of approach can be used for a child within that age bracket?
Thank you. So, in terms of, supporting children through that, every child, has their own needs, and even though you might have 2 children, 3 children, they're very different from each other. And the fact that this worked for this child does not necessarily mean it's going to work. And we often get caught up in those things to think, this is how we do it in this house and all of that, and
So
neglecting, their individual needs and
this
all of
is my house. As long as you live here, you're going to do what I tell you.
Exactly. Do you get what I mean? So, with regards to that, depending on the child's age, will determine what approach you have to do and how you do it. So, for like a 2-year-old, and that's a toddler we're talking about. So, it's all going to be stemming from a play, from a play perspective, like modeling those things and showing the child. So, in terms of you want to show the child or teach the child how to share, you're going to be playing like your game playing to share, to help the child to learn how to share and all of those things. You will be actively listening to the child to validate how their feelings. You keep eye contact with the child. I think for me, i'm very I'm very, very close with my children, and sometimes they're like, you know me, sometimes we get so caught up with all the things that we are doing around us, and then those things we never able to get our hands grip on that, because they could do something. Okay, they could show an emotion, or they could show something, they could give a different reaction, out of the norm, but I'll pick up on that. Oh, normally when we do talk about these things, I think you take it cool, but I think on this occasion, your
Mm,
reaction was different, and I'm really interested. Like, what triggered that
happened.
reaction, and what's informing that, to
Yes.
see if they'll be able to. So with the toddler, for example, coming back to a toddler, what I did with my own children is, being very playful with them. Okay, being very, very playful, but also ensuring that they do understand, depending on their level of understanding, they do understand their routine, their boundaries, they do understand the language as well that you use, to help them. So if it's a toddler, you have to choose child friendly. Sometimes you can even role play it in terms of their favorite toy, to say, this is how this person shows mommy when they are, not happy. This is how this person shows mommy when they are. So they begin to, and even with adults, sometimes not adults, but children that have grown and experienced trauma, sometimes they are so afraid of their trauma because of the things attached to them psychologically with their experience. You do not want to talk about their trauma directly. So that's why I'm saying that every child is very different. You want to use a third person. You want to use an object of reference, maybe a Barbie doll or something like that, to talk through what their trauma looks like, or what their life have looked like. And sometimes they feel comfortable talking about those things when it's coming from the toys perspective and not theirs, because they are so much afraid of that. So I think for toddlers, I'm going back to be playful around it, be attentive. You have to role play it. You have to lead by example and showing them and all of that. And I think it does work. But like I say, look at the child and their needs, and what you think will work best for them. I have like a 15-year-old who works best with visuals. So everybody would think, oh, visuals actually is somebody. So he would rather regulate and get it right when it has to do with something like visuals. So if you're putting in something that he needs to follow, or something he has to do, in as much as you're putting words, put visuals, then it makes them kind of connect to it as well.
Right. Right. Okay. So you mentioned earlier on, and I'm just thinking, okay, now let's look at the adults. Let's look at the adults. Earlier on, when we started the show, we played a video, and in the video, the lady said there was a question to the woman. Do you think your mother loved you? She said no. At some point she said, I was so scared. I was afraid of my mom. Asked why. And a lot of the traumas that she experienced was as a result of her being the exact replica of her dad,
Yeah.
All right.
a mirror image of her dad who happened to have broken her mother's heart. And so I guess her mother looking at the daughter is a constant reminder of the man that broke my heart, the man that I truly loved that didn't love me back and didn't want to marry me. And so this adult that's having to now live with this trauma, because having to relive the experience of having a mother that could never bring herself up to the place to say, I love you, child, I love you, daughter, and seeing how she's breaking down. How I want us to look at how childhood trauma carries into adulthood, and maybe look at certain areas that this tends to pan out a lot of the time. So let's look at first the emotional patterns, the trust issues, and the inner childhood pain for a girl child that has been abused. And then let's look at how it also pans out for a boy child that has experienced this trauma. Um, Abena, would you like to start that conversation with us?
I want to get the question right in
So
terms
the
of.
question is, I want us to look at the emotional patterns, the trust issues, and the inner child pain from the child that has got experienced the trauma that is now an adult. So we are looking at the adult that has been wounded. How does these traumas show up in their emotional patterns, in in their trust, and also in kind of any childhood pain that they may be carrying? How do we pick these things up from those adults?
Okay. So, like I said, when these traumas that, people experience from their childhood, unprocessed, they live with it, it's buried somewhere in there, and they live with it till they are, till forever, until there has been an intervention, or something happened, and then they're able to have that healing. So in respect to that, you will see that this adult, okay, you will see the low self-esteem in there. You will see the psychological impact in terms of like post-traumatic stress disorder. You could see that sometimes. So when it comes to these the impact of traumas, sometimes it comes with, panic attacks. It
Wow.
comes with reenacting the traumas that you've experienced, in the past.
Mm,
It comes with your inability to trust others, even, because you have those low self-esteem, and, the traumas that you've experienced, you can't even trust yourself. And then you project that onto others. You begin to feel like you've closed your walls, that nobody
right.
can then come into those walls and all of, and they grow with that because it's then unprocessed. So
Hmm.
what that happens is that, I don't know if that's the next question that's going to come in, is, they are then expected to be a parent.
Right.
Okay, they're expected to parent a child. One, you're looking at somebody who has lost trust, who has very low self-esteem. Sometimes, and most of the times, these adults, because they cannot process it, they often have a way or a means of trying to, manage those,
Hmm.
i.e., misusing drugs, getting into all different kind of, behaviors, or getting into, I don't know the right word to use, but they devise their own ways of survival.
Mm.
Okay, and then you expect these
Coping
individuals
mechanism.
Yeah.
coping. Thank you. That's the right word I was looking for. So they adapt to those coping strategies because that's what they've always used to kind of make themselves feel okay and survive within that. Then they come on and have children, and then we expect them to parent these children with a low self-esteem, with the drug misuse, and most of the time when they've experienced these significant traumas, they tend to get into toxic relationships of control, of all sort of behaviors that do not set very good example, especially when they come into contact with somebody that has had similar experience as well. Then
Right.
it becomes a disaster. You can have a window of healing or a possibility of some sort of healing when you come into a relationship or into contact with somebody with the right headspace, has had an opposite upbringing of yours, and is able to help validate your emotions, even though they are not the creators of your emotion, but then they're able to help you have you look at things from a different perspective and have a healing. But then they follow on. If they don't, they follow on to have children, and then we expect them to parent them. And that's how come the repeated patterns also goes on.
Right.
Because whatever you're feeling, you're going to be projecting onto whoever is closer to you. And when your child is closer to you and you're struggling on the inside, what that means is that the child is going to bear the brunt of it, because already
Right.
your world is in chaos already. So I don't know.
Amazing. Jesse, is there anything you want to add to this, please, before I ask my question?
No, to be honest with you, Abena has said it all. The impact that it does have, especially with relationships, is a challenge, and you see that it becomes a pattern. That if the cycle is not broken, it goes on from generation to generation. So yeah,
So,
she's mentioned all the key points. Yeah.
right. So this is my question to you, Jesse, to start. I think Abuna has taken enough today, bullets from us today. Um, we are all products of our environment, and most parents actually parent. We copy our style of parenting from what we learn from our our parents, and henceforth. So a lot of the times we all repeating or think that what we're doing is actually the right thing, especially from where we're from in terms of West Africa and how discipline is being dished out to kids. Now, half of the time when people from the West look at the way things are being handled, then they say it's abuse. Back home, when our parents and our forefathers also sit down, they say yes, we are disciplining our child. And to that you would say,
Sorry, go on, Abba. Sorry.
so um the West, when the West look at the how the West Africa we discipline our kids, they will say it's child abuse.
Yeah.
But when our forefathers and our elders sit down and the way they will discipline their kids is, yeah, this is the right way of disciplining our kids. In looking at those scenarios, what do you think about that?
Yeah, so stemming back again to what I said, discipline is not about control, irrespective of which background or culture you're coming from. Discipline should not be done in such a way that it will end up damaging or causing, further harm to whoever you're disciplining. When you do that, then it's classified as abuse because the end result is not something positive because the whole aspect of discipline is to ensure that that behavior does not repeat itself or you're trying to regulate that behavior because
Right.
sometimes it does take time. So if discipline is handled in a way that is causing trauma, like Abinat said, is causing harm, it's inflicting on the physical well-being, the psychological well-being, and mental well-being of the child. This is clearly abuse. I think, irrespective of which background, whether it was the Western world or the African, culture. So this is where we need to educate. People from all sorts of different parts of the world, whether it's Africa, if people are not aware of some of these things that we're talking about, like trauma and the impact that it has on the children all the way through from childhood to adulthood, I think this is where education needs to come in, for such people, because irrespective of how they do it, it should not damage whoever you're disciplining. Discipline should be done with clear boundaries. It should be done calmly. It should not inflict any harm or cause any harm mentally, psychologically on the person. It should rather help fix the behavior and not to cause damage. Anything other than that is classified as abuse.
Okay. Jesse, I had to catch myself,
I will change the name.
You mentioned there that discipline should, it should not cause harm.
Yeah.
Abena, earlier when you mentioned, you were talking about disciplining. Okay, let me phrase my question so we get it. And this is based on earlier on the video. There was a man in there that was so broken because he has realized that his 10 and 12-year-old sons are exact replica of his behavior. And he said he has lived with that guilt for however long. And because of that guilt, this man literally wants to take his life. and he's self-harming himself because he doesn't understand how, I'm assuming, that was done to him, and he has repeated that pattern. And the thought that one day his two sons are going to be sitting right where he's sitting, telling a worse story than his. He couldn't live with that thought. So, Abuna, for that parent that has realized that they have caused the harm, that are beginning to see a pattern, a mirror reflection of themselves, their dysfunctional selves, in that of their children, is there a remedy? Can this be resolved? And if it can, how do we approach this so they are not living in the guilt, but some corrections can be made?
Okay. So I think it's always good to acknowledge those parents that realizes that actually my actions have caused damage to my children, and that they need to be really I'm trying to find the word right to using that is courage. Okay,
Mhm.
acceptance of the damage that you've caused, acceptance of
Being
the
accountable, yeah, accountability, and
taking
then
accountability for what you have caused the children. It's really, really a big courage that needs to be, acknowledged in respect to the parents, because it's from that point of acknowledgement is where the healing will begin.
mhm,
It's where change can take place. Because when you look at the cycle of change
mhm.
can never happen when there's no acknowledgement at all.
Right,
That's
right.
true. That is true.
So when there is that first point of the parent who has caused this damage, regardless of their own experiences, because regardless of your experience, your first duty to the child is to ensure that you bring up the child right. You are the steward of the child. Okay, so it's not about yourself, it's about your child. So you tend to have to seek help because you want the best for your child. So you want to seek help, you want to be able to do things right for the child. So when it comes to that, it's no longer you. It's then you focusing on the child and ensuring the child gets the best. So if we're not able to do that, and for whatever the reason, if it was too much for you to do and you became caught up and began to repeat the cycle, the point of you coming back to yourself to say, listen, I think I've caused a mess and I acknowledge I am at fault for the damage I've caused. It's a great breakthrough. And of course, there is healing, there is repair. First is to acknowledge and to say sorry. Sorry for the damage that you've caused. Be part of the healing.
Yeah.
Seek help. There are therapists out there. There are agencies that offers counseling therapies. There are agencies. There are so many ways you could have those counseling. You could have like play therapy, for example, if it's a child or something like that. Even adults, some adults do engage in play therapy because it's difficult for them to process it. But saying sorry to start with, I think helps. Reversing those patterns and creating a change is also a positive way to start for parents that have, repeated the cycle for their children.
Okay. Jesse, are there any maybe books, any other methods like journaling or any safe space that maybe you can recommend, and possibly Abna as well, you can recommend to help as the go-to tools or resources for that healing to take?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Lady Belin. So there's two books that personally I've read myself that I recommended. One is The Whole Brain Child
Mhm,
by Daniel J. Siegel and Tina Payne Bryson. So this book provides strategies for nurturing emotional intelligence and resilience, by helping children integrate their emotions and reasoning. And also another book is Parenting from Inside Out, once again by Daniel J. Siegel and Mary Hatzel. So this book encourages parents to reflect on their own childhood experiences to become more mindful and empathetic in their parenting approach. So these are the main two books that I would highly recommend any parent can read. And also to add on to what Abena just said, it's very important that we, as parents, we think about the way we're parenting not from a place of pain, but from a place of purpose. It's very important that we reflect on our parenting when it comes to what we've been through, if a parent has been through something, the trauma and everything, it's really important that they see the child as someone they had and they want to raise, not a child that they wish to have had, but this is the child that they have. So it's important to raise a child not from a place of pain, but from a place of purpose. Really important.
I
Wow.
think that comment there, you almost Jesse, you just intentionally decided to close the show for us with that
Those
comment.
And,
I mean, after that comment, can we even come up with anything else?
yeah.
and for someone who cannot afford, therapy,
Yeah.
I always like to refer, always go back to the roots, because
Yes.
more than half of the stories that we hear is actually coming from back home. And to be fair with you, back home is what I know and what I can relate to, more. Also to help those back home who are also going through this kind of issues. Unlike the West, there is facilities available to help people,
Yeah.
but back home, what does people have? So, so what are some of the steps for someone who cannot read a book, somebody who have no money to go for therapy? I mean, what are some of the simple steps that they can do to, I'll say, to deal with their past, or this kind of emotional imbalance? Um, Abna, please.
Okay. So there are, thankfully, from where we come from, there are a lot of churches around, okay? And I think most of us belong to a church, okay?
Yeah.
Or
Don't
your
let me play
Christian.
devil's advocate and say, what if I'm not Christian?
Okay.
Yeah. So
No, don't worry.
if you're not a Christian, there are safe places where you could have those communication or those chats with, and those places where you can have those support from. There are so many groups. There are, you know, positive role models that you look up to that you could have, but somebody who could argue to say those we think are positive role models, it ends
No,
up
but
that they're
Abena, the
actually
problem is, how do you
not.
go to your church when the pastor is saying spare the rod and spoil the child, and your dad is beating you with the rod, and
You know,
why you understand me?
yeah. But I think that you would see that these are some of the things I want to, model. When you see those things in those people, it's okay to have those chats to say, "Can you help me? I need to have this. I need to play this kind of role. I need to make a change. Could you help?" So there's always room to make that, possible. There are people you could approach. There are organizations. There are groups that you can approach, support groups. And I think we should start by creating some actually, so that
Wow,
people
Actually,
Yeah, I
can
was just
yeah, a
about to
safe,
say
wow,
we
a
can
safe
start.
space,
Yeah,
yeah,
isn't
yeah,
it?
yeah.
A
quick
safe space.
solution. Yeah,
Wow, that the Holy Ghost talking through you right now.
yeah,
Is
yeah.
And
that
is there
right
anything else you can
there?
add to it,
Maybe
Jesse,
we could
for
have
us?
like some kind of meetup
Wow.
group
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
Let's create that psychologically safe space.
yeah.
No judgment whatsoever. I think that there was a period of time where, especially when we had those grandmothers in the communities, that if you as a parent, if you were getting it wrong, you had that grandmother, almost like that elder, that wise elder in the community that you would approach. You know what? I'm not sure. I think maybe I did that to my child, and their behavior, I think they don't trust me. They look a bit scared of me and all that stuff. I'm not sure if I'm doing it right. Can you offer me any advice, any guidelines? But nowadays, most children don't even get to meet their grandparents and
No,
all that
actually,
stuff. And
no,
again,
they do
people are
meet, and
even
the
scared.
grandmothers are 38, on TikToks. Great grandmother is 48, saying, she's had a time.
I think that the grandmothers or the grandparents, they created that balance so that when the parent discipline was a bit harsh, they were like the sweet spot
Mm.
for the child, to bring them back in, so that there was always that balance where there was a little bit of harshness and then a little bit of comfort, so it wasn't too sweet, neither was it too sour. But again, nowadays, in this space that we're finding ourselves, where people are even scared to approach someone and share, I'm struggling with this, can you help me? It's like we're living in no, everyone is, no man is an island, but literally that's what we're, everyone wants to mind their business and no one wants anybody else to know their business. So Abna, what you actually suggesting, I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how this thing it starts, but hey, there's nothing like a foolish
Where there's a
idea, they
will,
say,
there's
right?
also
I
way.
think the difficulty, what makes it difficult, especially in this diaspora, is that when we are having those open spaces where we could talk and all of that, safeguarding is our duty,
Yeah.
So if you share something that we think, this really counts on the safeguarding, we reserve the right to raise it with the appropriate bodies to help ensure people's
Right.
safety. So sometimes it kind of holds people back in coming to share or have that open space to talk about, what they think they will need support with. But so I
Right.
think that, God will
So
help
how
us.
do we mitigate? Abna, that point that you it's a really good point, But how do we mitigate that? Because again, if they don't speak up, then the problem continues, isn't it? Because then they haven't been empowered with any other different
No, but
tools
you
to
cannot
do it
intervene
right.
without their
But
permission to.
how? Sorry.
I'm saying, I'm sorry for cutting you off, but sometimes also, well, in the West here, sometimes you cannot intervene in somebody's issues without their permission.
No, so when it's safeguarding, you don't need their permission to
Oh,
intervene.
wow.
So
Well,
it's
Hey,
safe.
okay, you know what, Abna? You suggested this. It was an idea that we think is nice, but I want us to see how best, because again, we are encouraging them to speak up,
Yeah.
ask questions, ask for help. But if I'm going to speak up, if I'm going to ask for help, if I'm going to share that this is my struggle and I want you to help me, and then the next thing I know is that social services are going to come knocking on my door, the police are going to come knocking on my door, we just put a barrier.
And
yeah.
of
How do
course, we
we
will.
create that trust in space, and how do we support
Mm.
this individual before we have to bring the law in or anything like that? How? Because it would take a great deal of courage for them to even want to speak up, and the fact that they're speaking is probably because they have acknowledged that no, I have a problem,
Right.
no, I'm not doing it right, and I need that support and the help. But if my saying that puts me brings it and the law in, we've just shut the door again.
Mm.
We've literally diffused this environment that how do we manage? How would we be able to manage that if that was to go ahead, that
Okay,
idea was to be implemented? How do we manage that
okay.
that bit there to make
Thank
sure
you.
that we still have that trust element?
So, as I suggested, it's coming from a place of love. Okay. And it's also when it's coming from a place of love, our ideal goal is to ensure that everybody is safe. So we are not, trying to trigger things that will cause people to feel unsafe or to be on the edge or anything like that. We also, even though we are persons, everybody has a duty to safeguard. So
Mhm.
it's about, educating and creating reassurances to these individuals that comes in, because I'm sure you'll be in that vulnerable state to want to, get that help, to want to seek for that support. So it's about educating them, what we mean by, you know, safeguarding and of your, and if you share some things that trigger safeguarding concerns. Some people do not understand what the safeguarding concerns look like. They do not have any, education, or they are not aware of those things that trigger those safeguarding. So it's about supporting them with those information in terms of our discussion, what would trigger a safeguarding concerns that we would have to raise for support to be
Yeah.
for intervention to be in place.
Mhm.
Because for safeguarding concerns, when you're sharing something with me that I feel there's a risk of harm to somebody or to yourself, I cannot sit here when you share something and I know that your life is at risk, and then I'll watch you, because the next thing,
Mm.
if something
Mm.
happens to you, I cannot forgive myself. So
Yeah.
we are all trying to protect each other, but at the same time, we are mindful of what environments that we are in and how we can then support each other. So if they don't know, then they're going to be very anxious. They're going to think, oh, who are these people I'm actually going to have these meetings with? And am I going to have people now looking into my issues or whatever it is? And, what's the point of me doing this? So we are coming from a place of support. We are ever ready to support and to be used as vessels. Obviously, this is a Christian oriented, show. So we are coming from a place where we are being used as a vessel of God to support, his people, his children. And so we would provide that education to help them understand what we would raise and what we wouldn't really be raising, because at the end of the day, our, goal is to ensure that people are safe and they are happy and their well-being is well, catered for. So
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
Let's see.
Wow.
Well, we've spoken it out into the air. Let's see what comes
I mean,
back.
regardless of whether it's a show or something. So, for example, if I meet you, outside, Lady Berlin, and I'm having a chat with you, and I'm telling you, oh my God, I want to do something to myself. Oh my God, I wanna do, using very, I don't know, violent, languages and all of that, and telling you I want to do this to my next door neighbor. You don't know who my next door neighbor is, but at the end of the day, you have a duty to ensure that my next door neighbor is safe.
Safe,
I have
yeah.
a
Yep.
duty. You get what I mean? So if after your call with me, you feel like, oh my God, I think her life is at risk, I think that child's life is at risk, I think that neighbor's life is at risk, then you have a duty to make sure that you involve, the appropriate agencies that would ensure that safety in there. Because
Yep.
mind you,
Yep.
when I've had a chat with you, I cannot maybe have direct access to you to make sure that you're safe. I cannot be in control of your actions, after my call with you or whatever. But I think when we provide that education and reassurance, it will give them the space to talk, things they can talk about and the things that, but regardless of where we are, whether we are in Ghana or wherever, I think we are always carrying that safeguarding heart everywhere we go. So I think my approach, even in Ghana, will be different. So if I go to Ghana and I'm seeing certain things, like I'm not going to wait, I'm not going to be a bystander.
No.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think awareness
Yes,
to
we do
bystanders as
not
well.
want to encourage
I will not be a
bystanders.
bystander. I will
And
not.
can we believe that we've gone out of time? We've even exceeded an extra. We've borrowed an extra 8 minutes. Oh God, this conversation or this topic can go on for, because it's like there's just so
Yeah.
much, so many areas that needs to be spoken of. But I don't know whether we should run it up, just finish it, or because I really wanted to throw in just one more, just one more. Yes,
One
yes.
more.
Just
Just
one
Point
more. One more.
again.
Just
I
one
think
more.
today
Just one more. Just
has
one
had a
more.
lot of break time.
Just one more. I
anyway,
know you can't help yourself. Just fire.
today we really wanted to comport ourselves and stay within 1 hour
Yeah.
time. But I just want
Say it. Just say it.
Jesse, one truth. I want you to share one truth. Keep it short. Just one truth for a parent to round up all the conversation that we've had for the last 2-3 weeks. One truth that can help a parent. Then I'm gonna write the one truth for the child or the adult. You can choose either the child or the adult. So
Thank you, Lady Belin. One thing I'll say to sum it up all is parenting from purpose means that pausing, regulating yourself, and choosing a response that teaches rather than punishes. So that's one of the things that I will round up with. Always think about, is it from a place of pain or is it from a place of purpose?
thank you.
Wow.
Okay. I'll choose from the child's perspective, from the
Okay.
child, that for a child, okay, you are an important person that will grow up to be a very significant adult. And it's important that you have, a good parenting. It's important that you're happy and you're thriving, positively. And our wish, for every child. And we hope that by this show, we will be able to equip, parents in different, parts of the world to be able to bring up the children the way they ought to grow up, not as damaged individuals, but as ones that are, good and well brought up.
Okay. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you
And for
so
the
much
adult
for
that is listening that has experienced these traumas through in their childhood, that is living with that trauma, I just want to share. Sorry if it's coming from a biblical perspective, but again, everything, the foundation is God. I want to share this scripture with you. For I will restore health to you, and your wounds I will heal, declares the Lord. That's Jeremiah 30 and verse
Yes.
17. I want you to know that irrespective of the trauma or the childhood experiences that you've had, that God is willing to heal you from every trauma. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter what kind of help, professional help you seek out there. If God does not step in, if the mercy, the grace, and the love of God does not step in to help you, you will not be able to overcome that. We want to see you in all of your glory. We want to see you standing in your power, making sure that when you've become a parent, you do you do right by being equipped. So be encouraged and know that restoration is there for you, that healing is there for you, because God wants to do that for you. And we want to take this opportunity to thank each and every single one of you that allowed us into your space this evening to be of great service to you. And if anything that we have shared has triggered anything, has triggered any emotion, is because you're still carrying that hurt. And we pray that you'll be able to seek the necessary help that you need so that you can overcome that. And I want to pass the last baton to Albert, my co-host, as we close up.
Well, thank you so much, Jesse, for coming through. Thank you so much, Abena May. You guys have been so much of a blessing. I just sat down and I just soak it all in. Your expertise, your advice has been a blessing unto everyone, and hope we will have more time and for you guys to come in and share your amazing and knowledge with us. Lady Belin, I'll give it back to you.
Guys, thank you so much. Thank
Just
you for gracing us with your presence and your contribution on this platform. We hope we'll have opportunity to bring you on here more times in future so that you can help us to create the environment that we all need in order to thrive and be our best. And so thank you, and thank you to our listeners and our viewers. Without you, we have no reason to be sitting here. Thank you
Yeah.
for allowing us into your various spaces. And if tonight or this evening's topic of conversation has in any way been helpful, share. If you're not already following us on our social media platforms, it's at Lady Belin Show. You'll find us on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. We are there. We're there. And we have so much content out there that will be of great service to you. Have a lovely evening wherever you're watching us from, and God bless you. Take care all.
Bye, everyone.
Thank
bye.
you for joining us today on the Lady Belin Show. May the story shared stir your heart, renew your faith, and remind you that God is still writing yours. Until next time, keep growing, keep believing, and keep finding strength in your story.